Welcome to GW Insights and our first podcast of the year. My name's Reuben and I'll be your host today. Before we get started, I want to make a special introduction to my colleague, Mark Simpson. Mark Simpson is our technical director here at GW. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Reuben. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. Always welcome. Today, we're really going to be focusing on the common problems with legacy transformation. I thought what would be great as our tour guide, really, is to get into your understanding of what that actually means.
Yeah, sure. And maybe I'll just give a background on myself as to why I feel that I've got a lot of opinion on legacy transformations and legacy systems. So I'm responsible for technology, adoption, innovation at GW. I'm responsible for managing and monitoring our tech debt. So you see, in that kind of remit, bringing people up to date with technology and making sure we deal with our legacy challenges is paramount and is primary in my role. I'm also responsible for the technology implementation at our major clients at the moment, and they are large enterprises. So they've been building software for many, many years, 30, 40 years. Some of these systems have been around for. So again, in that remit, that is a lot of our role as an external kind of consultancy and product development company to try and help them deal with some of that legacy. Yeah. So onto the problem of maybe first we clarify then what we mean by
legacy. I mean, when you talk about legacy systems that are 30 to 40 years old, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of alligators and a lot of sharks in there. So just kind of give us a succinct view of what that phrase means to you.
Yeah, and I've worked with large enterprises for quite a while, and the term legacy has always had a bit of a stigma about it. Oh, I don't want to open up the box on that legacy system. I don't want to go anywhere near that. And I've seen companies and organisations almost try to rebrand legacy applications. I've heard a lot try to name them heritage systems. Yeah. Like they should be in a museum and people should have a little browse through them to see how IT used to be in yesteryear. Seen people just label them as BAU systems, and things like that. But I actually think the term legacy is right, because the term legacy means that it's been left by almost a previous generation. And that could be a previous team, previous technology, previous dev engineering approaches. Us as an industry are fairly young if you compare us to the building industry or something like that. Yeah. And we're always learning. We will look at ways to do things wrong and improve our techniques. Today I wouldn't put a system in without full good automation testing, without good model-driven documentation. 30, 40 years ago, or you would put in systems that you would do a great design, but then it would be definitely more of a waterfall approach of then building it and testing it and then moving on to the next things. So, it's not that necessarily legacy systems were designed not to be future-proofed, but the reality is they are not future-proofed, right? They have not been built with the future advances in technology and techniques in mind. So they do give you a problem. It's very rare that a legacy system can be isolated and work on their own. They're part of your enterprise. They're running critical elements in your system. So you have to integrate to them. You have to change them, right? So to me, that term legacy is right. It's something that is becoming costly to maintain, that doesn't fit in with your modern development practices, that is hard to integrate to, that there is now a lack of product knowledge in. And the technology is not the technology that you've got skills in your organization, or is it easily achievable through the markets?
Yeah. And I think I'm seeing that framing of digital transformation and people trying to change it constantly now. So that's a really interesting framing. I think what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the key problems, and you're going to talk us through that. To frame it from a financial services point of view, because that's obviously a big sector for us. I read a recent report in the last week from the FCA, and they came up with a stat after interviewing almost the full host of big enterprise financial companies in the UK, 92% of UK financial services firms still rely on legacy technology. So I think as we go through the problems, that really frames out that this is a massive, massive issue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, indeed. And I think we see a lot of challenges in financial services because it was one of the first industries to really kind of put a lot of investment into IT with decisioning and automation in the back office, a lot of, kind of auditing requirements, etc. But it's also one of the industries that really wants to benefit from digitization, and new technology, and really improving that customer experience, through whatever the device, wherever you are, wherever you are in the process. So they've got that challenge, of critical systems that are very, risky to change, with CTOs who will be risk averse in those back office systems, with the commercial directors really trying to push digitization and better customer experience. So I think it is definitely an industry where the challenge of legacy is big on the boardroom agenda, I think.
Okay. Well, let's get into the muck and nettles and start with problem one. And we've identified that as technical debt being neglected by the business. So talk us through how that really plays out in your view.
Yeah, and I think what happens here is that when someone is looking at new initiatives, they will always prototype new systems, try and define what value that system will give them. They will build the ROI on what the new system will give them.
Yeah.
What IT and what the industry have always been, has always been difficult for the industry, is to find what the total cost of ownership of that system will be, what the effort is in integrating the legacy systems, what the effort is in verifying that everything is still working on the new system. It's always been difficult as well to plan how you implement a new system on top of an old system, how you stage it, how you incrementally add value, elements like that. So what has grown over time is this idea that people are putting in the new systems, but they're almost ring fencing. They're almost, putting the black and yellow tape around the legacy system. Don't change that as part of the new system. So what happens then is at the end of the project, you're left with what on the surface feels like a new digitized system meeting some new requirements, but underneath is a really, really sort of ticking time bomb almost of the legacy system. And then for the next investment, people need to prioritize. Budgets are always constrained, and at the moment maybe more than ever, but I think it's always been the case ever since I've worked in IT. You need to make the business case for the change. So you end up focusing on the new, not sorting out the old problems.
Yeah.
So you put up with the old design, the old architecture, the old technology, the old solutions as constraints to the new, and you end up spending more money on the new to get around those problems. And, kind of that any surplus budget then just ends up dealing with just maintenance of those old systems, fixing security, kind of vulnerabilities, and doing, minimal upgrades, etc., without really tackling the real problem.
I mean,
the
straight away, I'm thinking innovation killer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what then people tend to treat technical debt as is people will, technical debt is a term that's been coined, for quite a while now. And engineering teams, and our engineering team are one of those, are very hot on technical debt. They're very often hot on leaving code better than where you found it, so that if people are in the code, they will improve it, they will refactor it, they will increase test coverage. As an engineering discipline, most engineering teams are are very good at dealing with tech debt in the product that they support. What organizations are traditionally weak at is solving architecture debt, tech debt, platform tech debt, design tech debt, the bigger challenges where you've got to rip things apart before you put them back together. So if you were coming to me and saying, I want this change done in the front end, and we thought if this was in the perfect architecture, it would be 1 day's worth of work. But with the legacy that it's built on, I'm going to quote 10 days. But to sort out the architecture legacy problems would be 50 days. You're not going to approve the 50 days. You might go for the 10 days, right? Ideally, you'll be trying to push for this should only be a 1-day change. So that recognition of how tech debt is constraining people long-term and putting that investment to sort the real root of the problem out is kind of very, very rarely done in large enterprises, I think.
And I think what backs that up is another stat. It was again in the FCA report, and they said that at a minimum, all of their membership took on average 6 to 12 months to launch and build a new product. So nothing happens quickly because everything's a mess, right?
Yeah, and indeed. And what I would suggest, my experience tells me, is that middle option of keeping the legacy as a constraint and quoting 10 days will become 20 days, will become 30 days. You put it into test, you go live, you find a bug and it's deep down, then it becomes 50 days, and I would guarantee normally if you look at a longer timeline, 3 years, 5 years, not sorting out the legacy challenges will cost you more in the long run than just focusing on the front end, the shiny new application.
Okay, that's really interesting. So that's problem one. Let's look at two, and what we call internally project mentality, which we know leads to real shortism and short-term thinking. Do you want to get into the weeds on that one?
Yeah, to us, this is absolutely key, and it's very connected to why technical debt has not been sorted out within organizations. What's the counter to a project mentality? Well, it's a product mentality. That's what we strive for. To understand that when you're writing IT software, it shouldn't be treated as a project. The end of the project should not be when something goes live. That's the start. That's day one of the product. That's when the business users will start using that system and start to reap value. Software has no value when it's in test cycle. It has no value until it's live. It has no value until it starts being used, right? But because of these ROI challenges we've talked to and budget challenges, what ends up happening is the IT teams schedule, they do the estimates and they plan for a project life cycle taking you up to go live. They may have an early life support phase, they may have a transition phase, but they're very much talking about and planning for that implementation phase, right? So, and then they may have separate budgets to maintain the system. And what we see often happening with the project mentality is after go live, it even goes to another team, right? So it goes to a BAU team or a maintenance team, often, trying to go for more maybe junior resources or cheaper resources on that to cut the cost of maintenance. So why would you cut the cost of something when it's only then it starts to add value? It's counterintuitive, really. So in our view, we want to have an approach and we think, everyone should have an approach where you get away from that project mentality, you get away from celebration. I mean, celebrating your successes when things go live are fine, but celebrate even better where you get the stats of the first month's use of what the business users are getting and what the outcomes of that system are, right? And with the project mentality, what will tend to happen is that you will just work on that short-term targets of hitting your requirements, right? Without seeing what is preventing value from being added, without monitoring that system when it's in and being able to slightly divert your attention to the areas that need attention. having a long-term investment plan, investments based on total costs of ownership, not just a ROI projection from go live. If we put this in system in, we're going to save this much or we're going to add this much value. Really think about the total cost of ownership and have clear asset improvement and maintenance approaches, not just project support. Don't fix just the things that people have reported as wrong. Fix the things that are going to cause the product a problem in the future, keeping it current, dealing with tech debt, making sure you've got clear monitoring in place and logging in place, so that, run books, support manuals, chatbots that are actually telling the users how to use the system rather than just trying to spend a lot of time trying to understand what their problem is, right?
Yeah.
So, we would sum all that up into trying to take a product mentality, treating it as a long-term critical product rather than just a project mentality with all the time pressures just to get it over the line and then disband the team. That's no good for the engineering team. It's no good for the product ownership team. It's no good for the users. And ultimately, it's no good for the business.
Yeah. I think from an IT director perspective, if I'm kind of wearing that lens, I'm already starting to grow in confidence about your methodology and the foundation that you build upon. I think that's what we're kind of really talking about now. Those kind of foundations and ways of building business confidence in what we're doing, right?
Yeah, and on our one of our major clients at the moment, that they've really embraced sort of the product team's mentality, and there are two key roles on each of these products. There's the product owner, who is responsible for long-term value of the products at a cost that there is a business case made on, right? But there's also an asset owner. Now, their responsibility is to make sure the asset stays current, doesn't build up technical debt, is secure, maintainable, scalable, resilient, all the abilities that go with a really good, structured product. They work closely with the product owner to understand priorities. So we are getting there with that product team, whereby a security vulnerability will be considered against priority against a business change initiative that will drive a lot of extra revenue. Those two things are not separate with separate budgets. They are considered together, because there's so much value here. Can we have a security, how big is the security risk? Can we do that next? Or is the security risk got to take priority one over that? So that's what I think is reaping the benefit of a product mentality, looking together at that and making sure this product can evolve over time. And I'm really hoping on those products, we don't have any legacy modernization projects on that product, because it will evolve as technology evolves and will innovate and will give the value, right?
So, problem 3, and it's very much of a consequence of 1 and 2. We call it kicking the can down the road. Talk us through how that plays out and what it means for your core IT leader.
Yeah, and I think one of the consequences of this is often the leaders within a software implementation project are measured on that project, not on long-term outcomes.
Yeah.
And actually, the life of a CIO, a CTO, a head of architecture within a lot of organizations, especially as they're transitioning into a more agile digital organization, is often fairly short-lived in career purposes. I don't know what the average would be. Maybe you'll be able to find that for us, Reuben.
Well, according to my LinkedIn, every 2 years they seem to fly off somewhere.
Right, yeah, so yeah. But and whether that's reflective of the whole industry or just your kind of the more digital focused ones that you tend to deal with, but those IT directors, those project managers, those leaders, they end up focusing just on the current, getting their current problem solved, trying to get as much immediate value to the business that they can. A good leader will leave a good legacy to the future generations, will make it maintainable, will allow you to reap the benefits in 10 years' time, not just in 3 years' time. But often that's perceived as costing more, right? Especially from this point now. I think if you fast forward 10 years and look back, it wouldn't have cost, it wouldn't in hindsight cost more. But now it's hard to put that case as to why you're going to spend money now for the future, right?
Yeah.
But if you were improving your house to live in, right, and you had a choice of spending X now or double to mean that you don't have to spend again in the next 10 years, you would have a choice. If you were moving out next year, you'd take probably the short-term option, and kick the problem down the road to the next people moving in. If you were there for that's where you're going to live for the next 10 years, you'd make the more strategic choices, right? So as an IT leader, you always want to be able to put the case for taking those strategic options, setting the groundwork for the future. But as the pressure ramps up on projects and as people get behind on timelines, which we see a lot in large enterprise projects, especially if they are not structured correctly, you will end up making compromises and you will kick the can down the road for the next projects. You will say, and it's almost like there's a maturity of dealing with tech debt, with the zero maturity, just ignoring it.
Yeah.
The level 1 maturity that I see everywhere is recognizing it, admitting we've got technical debt, but saying we haven't got the budget to fix it now, right? That's nearly as bad as zero, to be honest, because it's then you've got the problem where the next initiative does not just cost what it needed to cost for the return on investment, but it had solved the previous problem, the legacy problems, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's why we always call it kind of, just kicking the problem down the road for the next project. And then what's the next project do? Does that take on that cost? Well, if you've still got that mentality, you're going to kick it down the road further for the next project. And then suddenly the tech debt problem is just growing like a snowball.
Yeah. And again, wearing that IT leader hat, I feel like I'm getting closer and closer and closer to looking for new work.
Exactly. With a success on your CV, because you successfully delivered a project on time. Yeah. In fact, the more I think about it, the more like the successful kind of CVs or LinkedIn profiles would be the ones who are saying, I delivered on time and I left a great legacy for the next leader. And the next leader goes, what a great state that architecture and those processes were in place. That's a success, I would say.
So we're up to problem 4, and we've called it technology volatility. And I think never has it been more relevant in our industry with what's happening with AI and all the advances that seem to be changing week in, week out almost. Everybody that's got up to this stage is scared to death of backing the wrong horse. So talk us through your experiences with that.
Yeah, no, I think this has changed over the last sort of 10 to 15 years as I've watched the industry evolve. If we rewind back to sort of, the start of this century, really, people were backing major technology vendors. It was the technology vendors who were putting in the innovation budgets and were building new platforms, applications, and you would either back Oracle or SAP or Microsoft or IBM, and you'd go almost all in with those technology vendors. So you were led by their technology roadmaps. So you would upgrade because you were told to, because you had to. You'd look at their roadmaps and you say, right, we need to upgrade to the next version. And everything was fairly monolithic. Things were tied together. So you'd have these big upgrade projects that would almost freeze everything else. We need to do this large upgrade. As sort of technology standards evolved and as platforms evolved, things became a lot more distributed. They became a lot more decentralized. Open source became a lot more trusted, and the processes around it became a lot more trusted. So now IT architectures are a lot more varied, right? So you will have a mixture. You would definitely have hybrid cloud providers with what you've got now. You would definitely have some software that is owned and written in-house for your really custom software or differentiating software. You will have applications, SaaS applications provided by a multitude of different vendors, some very large, taking some of your bigger problems, some very niche, solving a specific problem for you. So across all of that, each of these vendors are moving at different paces. The open source community is innovating so fast, So we moved to JavaScript and TypeScript about sort of five, 6 years ago, and have gone through a couple of cycles of different frameworks, and now, just toolkits really, and libraries that we leverage. At the moment, a lot of our development is on something called React, and as we implemented React, that team are very focused now on Next.js, which is an evolution of that. So we need to understand, well, we haven't fully written all of our architecture in React now. Now, do we consider Next.js or don't we consider it? If we don't consider it, we'll be left behind on innovation and change and getting the best skills from our team. If we go all in on it, then what happens in 2 years' time when something else kind of happens? So technology is more volatile now than ever. I think there is more innovation happening, and everything that's happened with OpenAI and all the implication of the large learning modules and how that can help it from developer productivity to sort of data analysis seems to be making that even faster than ever. It really is a cumulative sort of impacts of these technologies coming forward. So what that tends to give you a challenge on your legacy application is, at what point do you jump on the train, that fast moving train? Because with the legacy challenges, the project or the initiative to upgrade that product to the new technology, you will feel that will take longer, that will move slower than the technology is moving. So we see a lot of uncertainty in leaders to say, do I move now to JavaScript? Do I move now to, do I wait for the next frameworks that are going out? Should I use low code because that's improving so fast with all the advent of AI helping with that? So it's almost like a bit like rabbit headlights, and a lot of teams just don't move because of it. They stand still. They're worried about backing the wrong horse. They want to wait for things to clear up as to what the dominant JavaScript framework is, or what the dominant, generative AI kind of solution. And of course, it never settles down. It just moves faster and faster and faster. So the right time to get on from an innovation point of view, the answer is always now. Start thinking about it, but be aware of the change. Get your architecture right. Get your design right. Make sure your new and old can coexist, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot more in the coming weeks if we do more of these. Put in the framework where you can start leveraging innovation and new technology now. Don't plan to say, well, we'll wait for a year, we'll wait 2 years, we'll wait until a fully low code is a reality, etc. So it's break out of that vicious cycle of not doing anything because you don't know what's coming next, and start building an architecture for change, basically.
So the next problem 5, we call this the technical debt chasm. Not very catchy, but it's what we call it. Talk us through the consequences of acting in that way and what you've seen in your long history.
Yeah, and I think chasm's a good word, because the point of chasm is it's too big to kind of overcome. It's too big to get to the other side. It's not just a river you can build a bridge over and connect two things. This is what we see organizations, I see in the industry, organizations always struggle with. The 3 problems we've talked about before: short-termism, kicking the can down the road, solving the problems in the future, and not taking action because of technology volatility. with the rate of change of technology and improvements and innovation getting faster and faster, you're just even further away from knowing how to deal with that tech debt. And the longer you leave that problem, the more that chasm grows, right?
Yeah.
And the impact of that is it becomes quite clear then that there's a problem there. You go and try and recruit for a new engineering lead. They'll look at the technology stack you've got. They might choose a different company because of that. You look for a new initiative from the commercial team or the digital team to say, could we just do this? Could we just put some generative AI on top of that data? An easy question that they expect the IT leaders to go, yeah, that's easy because our data is well structured. Whereas really you're thinking in your head, how can I expose that data? It's locked away. There's so many dependencies I've got to do before I can get at that data. And suddenly this innovation is getting constrained because of it, right?
Yeah.
I think even worse than that, these legacy systems will actually degrade over time. The performance will degrade as things are not getting upgraded, as things cannot be tuned because, they are so either suddenly memory intensive because of it or CPU intensive. You haven't been able to upgrade the hardware because the new operating systems or the new, the things you built on that platform are not compliant with your application, or you don't want to touch it because you haven't got the automated tests in place to be able to verify it hasn't broken anything. So these technologies, they then degrade, they get generations behind, they're suddenly harder to integrate to, we worked with an organization who had a COBOL system in place for a long time with one person who was supporting that and maintaining that. And we went in and we talked to him like individually and said, what do you really want out of this? And he says, I just want it to be decommissioned because I want to retire. And they keep persuading me to. And so we said, well, let's make that one of the aims. Why don't you help us write something that then can be used as kind of an integration layer for that to incrementally change that then, and then someone else can support that. So we kind of refocused him from maintenance to building that bridge, building that adapter, building something that could enable that legacy system to be unlocked. And it was like a new lease of life for him, it was a new outcome for it. So
I get that. I mean, from an analogy point of view, I'm thinking about the guy that just doesn't want to get out of bed in the morning because he's not got enough fingers to put in all the holes, right, of the boat. It just sounds absolutely chaotic.
Yeah, and the answer there is not to get more fingers, not to get more people. It's to take a step back, let it sink a little bit, and then work out how strategically you're going to do it. Or, maybe have the people putting the fingers in the boat while you do that thinking. But, you're not going to solve that problem by solving each one of those individual, holes because more were appearing or whatever. So, yeah.
Thanks, Mark. So that takes us into problem 6, and we're really getting to the end of the road now. This is a really simple one, but I think sometimes something really easy to miss, and that's business performance. I think this is a really key point, especially when you're trying to sell something to stakeholders. So can you talk us through that?
Yeah, and I think with this one, we see technical debt and the inability to evolve your legacy systems and to change your systems almost like a tax on the business. Everything is going to be more expensive. Everything is going to take longer. There'll be increased risk in making changes. And over time, what will start to happen is the business will shy away from asking that, or they will go to new shadow IT systems. They'll put in their little low-code application, to meet the new digital features that they need. And then they'll come back and say, well, actually, this is not scaling, or we can't change it. Can IT take control? Whereas the reason for that was because the data wasn't available from IT to be shared to the business, or they couldn't implement that new innovative SaaS app that they wanted to, or the bit of technology that they really wanted to do to add huge value to the business that might have been based on a new interface or a new conversational UI or a new decision engine, they just will not be able to do because of the, things locked away in the legacy systems. So a lot of the IT then becomes focused just on regulatory compliance and, mandatory kind of upgrades and things like that. And ultimately, any business who's not innovating with technology will be falling behind because your competitors will. So the sooner you solve those problems, the more you can, stay competitive with your clients, with your competitors, adding value to your clients and your customers.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting kind of human point from that point of view as well. You talked about people earlier and
Yeah.
getting the best people into your business. Straight away, we're at this problem and all the fun's gone out of the gate. We can't innovate. We can't solve problems. It's just an absolute nightmare. So I think it's a big people problem as well, right?
Yeah, and I think with our team, I can talk more personally about our team, but it's not just getting excited about the new latest technology. It's about solving the business's problems and the customer's problems.
Yeah.
You don't see that by just doing maintenance or by putting a project mentality in it. You see it by seeing your product, your software in use, adding value, customers going, that new UI that you rolled out was magnificent. That's allowing me to engage better with my customers. It's about seeing the analytics and seeing the upturn in usage. It's about seeing the ultimately more orders coming in your products. Certainly, even though we're all fairly technical in our nature in our team, that's what drives them. They can look and innovate and do little POCs on new technology. It's not the POCs that really excite them. It might at the start, but on long term, it's the seeing the outcomes of their software, seeing the fruits of their labor adding value to that business, right? And the more they're constrained by legacy, the more that's curtailed and the problems become about just how did I get that data into that legacy system, which is not exciting to them. It's not exciting as to how did I get that data out to those customers to drive more business for more, better outcomes for the business.
And from a customer experience point of view, you're just not going to be able to dazzle, right?
Yes. Yeah, indeed. And a lot of it comes down to data, right? So we're working with a large financial services organization, and we will do prototypes that we think look stunning, great visualizations, great user journey, right? And I'm talking personally about a workshop that we're in. We're really proud of this solution. But our maths was wrong on the figures. It was indicative. And the first thing the business user spots is it looks great, but the figures are wrong kind of thing. It's the data, right? And really importantly is we can put we can put a facade, a lipstick on the pig on a customer experience for something. But if we're not getting the right data from those legacy systems or from the back end systems at the right time to the right performance as well, it's no good having a great visualization that you're waiting for a spinning wheel for 10 seconds for it to load. It needs to be snappy. So to sort out legacy is not just about the UI you're presenting and making that customer experience better. It's about re-architecting the back office so that you've got the caches in place, you've got the externalized data platforms to provide, quick access to your data. You've got the workflow and the processes working okay. Legacy transformation doesn't just start at the UI, it goes right to the services layer, the processes around that, the data and the platforms, I think.
Okay, Mark, we're finally at our last problem. I'm exhausted. This is a little bit Marvel, to be quite honest. We've called it Endgame, right? So talk us through what this is and what it means.
So I think what we're saying here, if you haven't heeded all of those warnings of dealing with tech debt as you go along, looking at the architecture and the design, not just the engineering code side of things, if you've had a short-term approach and kick things down the road, then what tends to happen then, this ticking time bomb will threaten to go off. There will be huge risk in your legacy architecture. You will no longer be able to say, actually will solve this problem in the future. You'll reach end of support dates. There'll be critical vulnerabilities that you cannot solve in those systems. The risk will be, increased, and suddenly it'll be a mammoth task to actually replace, this application. Now, this sounds terrifying, and it is really. I'm terrified by this. And you go, this never happens though. People, heed the warnings on those learning signs. Well, it happens so frequently. I see this so often. And what tends to happen then is it's not a project that gets formed, it's a program of work. It's a modernization program or a legacy modernization program where suddenly the whole focus of IT becomes about getting rid of this legacy, doing this technology upgrade. And what tends to happen then is they look at the problem, and because they haven't recognized those warning signs, they say, well, there's no way to coexist these systems. There's no way to integrate it. We need to go big bang, right? So not only is it the most terrifying problem for your business, but you end up freezing business innovation and going for a big bang on your most challenging problem. It's crazy, to be honest, right? That approach. So, any IT who is having to say to the business, oh, we've got a change freeze because we're doing a big upgrade, should be seriously looking at their architecture and say, how have we got to the state of doing this? I also see that the reason why it becomes a program is because it's too big for one product team to solve.
Yeah.
So, and then as people stream it, they will say, well, this team looks at the new system. This team will deal with coexistence. This team will deal with the data migration. Yeah. So suddenly the people who are trying to do the innovation and the new stuff, what, do they not need to care about the data that's in it or coexisting? Again, it's a crazy split in my view to split it like that. You're pushing the problems to teams who are not kind of reaping the benefits of solving those problems. So they find the simplest and easiest way to do it. And, at the end of, a project, a program that might have been planned as 12 months, I'd say they normally take 2 or 3 years. I see this all over the place. The end of 3 years, we all celebrate. It was a great success because they reached the finish line. It doesn't matter that they're finished, while everyone else had already got changed, and gone up and adding value. It was a success because the project said it was a success. Yeah. The business users will be exhausted. All of the manual testing they will have had to have done, data migration, verification, testing in coexistence and system integration environments. The business is exhausted, And if I was that business user, I'd be like, I'm not asking for any change again. We'll leave it for a couple of years and the cycle begins again. Yeah. So unless you solve the problems of why you got into that place, right? It'll be a cycle that you're in, forever. You'll move to the next technology, but a lot of your design and architecture, and maybe even the data, will be structured as it was 20 years ago. Yeah. Right. So you might think you've solved the problem, but it'll be back up. But maybe you'll be in a new job by then, right?
Yeah. No, it sounds like the absolute burning building. You're losing people, you're losing bonuses, you're losing customers. It's just the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Mark. So I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Setting up our next conversation, we're going to be talking about the answers to all of those problems.
Okay.
So hopefully our viewers will get a lot from that and get some seeds for thought that might kind of change their philosophies or give them ideas for their own businesses. What I would say is we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear about what you've stepped into in the past in your career and how you've got round a problem.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen some good practice and some less so good practice, and we've learned from both. So definitely we'll share some insight, share some tips, share some givens, the things you must do, in my opinion. And hopefully it will help.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Mark, and I'll speak to you soon.